Hello, and thank you for taking part in this webinar brought to you by Aspen Strong. Aspen Strong is a mental health nonprofit promoting mental hygiene and connecting people to mental health resources in the Roaring Fork Valley. The purpose of this webinar is to build curiosity around your mental hygiene. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions, the hope being you will begin to develop more language for talking about mental health, either for yourself, a loved one, or a coworker. We will also review how to connect to the many mental health resources available in our valley. So let's talk mental hygiene. Here's my first question. What comes to mind when I say mental health? Take a few seconds. What is the first word, image, phrase that pops into your head? Some of you may have thought of things like meditation, self-care, exercise, and that's great. But my guess is most of you will think of words like depression and anxiety. This is one of the most common Google images that comes up when you Google mental health. Images that say things like stress, anxiety, phobia, depression, shame. Or some of you may have just thought of the word crazy. For a lot of people, when they hear the word mental health, they think crazy. Something is wrong with you. But what comes to mind when I say physical health? What is the first thing you think of? For most people, the first thing they think of when they hear physical health is exercising, eating well, biking, skiing, all the things we do to maintain our physical health on a regular basis. When did you learn about physical health? At a pretty young age, right? This is knowledge that is pretty much ingrained in us. What is dental health or dental hygiene? What's the first thing you think of? I bet you thought of brushing your teeth, flossing, going to the dentist, things you do on a regular basis to maintain healthy dental hygiene. When did you learn about dental hygiene? I bet most of you can't even remember. But my guess is your parents started brushing your teeth when you were a baby, creating daily habits that stick with you today to prevent cavities and tooth decay. So, what is mental hygiene? When did you learn about mental hygiene? For most of you, I bet you're thinking just now. And you know what? That's okay. Because the purpose of this talk is to get you to think about mental health in a different way. Being healthy is not just about physical and dental health. We have to be mentally healthy as well, a holistic approach to health. It's important to start thinking about the ways you can maintain your mental hygiene, like mental floss. When we think of mental floss as regular things we can do to maintain our mental hygiene, like self-care, meditation, exercise, talking to someone, we begin the process of breaking down the negative stigma attached to mental health and to have it imply the same thing as physical and dental health, something healthy and preventative. We all know what it means to have poor physical and dental health, but what does it look like to have poor mental hygiene? Well, we see someone who's comparing themselves to others and overly vulnerable, doesn't have healthy boundaries, is numb, doesn't sleep well or exercise, feeling disconnected from themselves or others, not taking care of themselves, keeping things in, not being able to talk to others. All of these things can lead to many negative outcomes. With depression, addiction, suicide, and crisis being issues that many people in our valley struggle with. But on the flip side, what does it look like to be mentally strong, to have mental strength? There seems to be a misunderstanding about mental health. We need to think about our mental health just like we think about physical health and dental hygiene. This requires changing our thinking and developing the language to talk about mental health and the mental health of others, and ultimately change the stigma around the term mental health. Mental health does not mean crazy, it means being mentally strong. It means doing the best we can and having a growth mindset. How can we better ourselves? Being vulnerable with those we can trust, maintaining our physical and dental hygiene, being mindful and in the moment, sleeping well and exercising, setting healthy boundaries, connecting with others, playing and laughing, loving, having empathy, and curiosity. This quote from Dr. Chris Willard explains how healthy mental hygiene can change our brain and increase our mental strength. Our brains are constantly changing, and things we do on a regular basis can truly make a difference in our mental health. Checking in on our mental health and strengthening our brain is prevention and helps us to build resilience and skills to take on obstacles that may come our way. Just like brushing our teeth and eating well promotes physical wellness. I'm sure there are some of you who are thinking, why are we learning about this stuff? Well, the truth is that our valley has its fair share of people who struggle with their mental health and with mental illness. Our valley suicide rate is 3 times the national average. Pitkin County had 38 suicides between 2004 and 2016. Of those who took their own life, 40% had alcohol in their system, and 32% were identified as having a problem with alcohol. 46% had a depressed mood around the time of their suicide, and 22% were identified as having a substance abuse problem. 68% had never sought mental health treatment. On a more global level, about 450 million people suffer from mental and behavioral issues worldwide. 1 in 4 will develop one or more mental health or behavioral issue during their lifetime. And according to the World Health Organization, the only sustainable method for reducing the burden of mental health and behavioral disorders is prevention. Prevention, or mental strength, continues to be a protective factor against mental illness. Prevention is the only sustainable method because everyone can do it. It just takes learning what signs and symptoms to look for, how to talk to each other, and how to find additional resources when needed. I'm sure there are still some of you who are wondering why you're learning about this stuff at work. The truth is, many people around you might be struggling, people you see on a daily basis. A quarter of the U.S. workforce, or 28 million workers ages 18 to 54, experience a mental health or substance abuse disorder. The most prevalent mental illnesses in the workplace are alcohol dependence or abuse, major depression, and anxiety disorders. But 71% of workers with mental illness have never sought help from a medical or mental health specialist for their symptoms. So what are the reasons for these statistics? Why aren't people seeking help? Well, some of these reasons include cost. Some people can't afford counseling. Fear of the unknown, fear of what others will think, the opinions of neighbors, employers, and the community. Concerns about confidentiality, or just not knowing where to go for help. And combine these with potential risk factors for living in mountain towns, and we begin to better understand the barriers. A recent article in Outside Magazine discusses the theories explaining why suicide rates in mountain towns are so high. It claims things like high cost of living, scarcity of good jobs, and financial stress play a big role. There may be fewer mental health resources than one would find in a big city. And some blame the play hard, party hard vibe in mountain towns that can lead to substance abuse, which is a risk factor for suicide, as well as social media and the culture of athletic one-upmanship. All too often we see posts from people who climbed this mountain or ran this race and then compare ourselves to them and their accomplishments. So what? How can maintaining your mental hygiene make a difference? How can we begin to change the language and build better understanding so that we're able to better connect to ourselves, connect with others, and connect to resources? At aspenstrong.org, you'll find a number of ways to connect with resources and develop the tools to talk about your mental hygiene and to talk to others about their mental health. At aspenstrong.org, you'll find links to our community calendar, our provider directory, our connection page, which provides toolkits for the general public, for youth, and for the workplace, as well as our screening tool. Our online screening program offers a quick anonymous mental health screenings, a way to check in on yourself or get a checkup from the neck up. If you're watching this webinar, it's likely you have already taken one of our screenings. So you already know that they are quick, anonymous, educational, and a quick way to determine if you or a loved one may need to check in with a mental health provider or other health professional. I'm sure some of you saw this page and thought, none of these screenings apply to me, and that's okay. These screenings are not meant to be diagnostic, but educational. They help give people language to talk about mental health. Perhaps you don't feel depressed now, but when you take the screening for depression, for example, you learn what signs and symptoms to look for in yourself or others in the future. So each screening will start with a series of questions asking about your age and other demographic questions. This helps us start to learn the needs of people in our valley, where people live and where people work. So then we can take these statistics to stakeholders, so then we can begin to develop more resources to meet the needs of individuals in our valley. So let's begin and pay attention to some of these questions, and let's start to learn and develop the language about what signs and symptoms to look for someone who might be struggling with depression. Over the past 2 weeks, how often have you been feeling low in energy or slowed down? Over the past 2 weeks, how often have you been blaming yourself for things? Over the past 2 weeks, how often have you had a poor appetite? Over the past 2 weeks, how often have you had difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep? Over the past 2 weeks, how often have you been feeling hopeless about the future? Over the past 2 weeks, how often have you been feeling blue? Over the past 2 weeks, how often have you been feeling no interest in things? Over the past 2 weeks, how often have you had feelings of worthlessness? Over the past 2 weeks, how often have you thought about or wanted to kill yourself? If you answer yes in any form, a box will pop up with the Hope Center crisis line, or you can call 911 or other local crisis response teams available at 24/7 help, which you can find at aspenstrong.org/crisis support. Over the past 2 weeks, how often have you had difficulty concentrating or making decisions? When you hit submit, a results page will come up and also more links to additional resources. So let's take a minute and talk about some of the questions that we were just asked. I might not be struggling with depression right now, but perhaps in the future, if I realize that something's different with my appetite and I'm not sleeping well, I can't concentrate like I used to be able to, or I'm starting to feel worthless or hopeless, perhaps that's a sign that I should check in on my mental health again. Maybe I need to take the screening over. Something has changed. Or maybe you know someone who is having some of these same symptoms, and maybe it's worth asking them how they're doing and if they're okay. There's also additional resources for crisis help. For example, you can chat with someone at the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. You can call this number, another national lifeline, call 911, or go to your local crisis response center like Mind Springs or the Hope Center. This link will take you to a page with additional articles about depression, how to recognize when to ask for help, or you can search other issues over here. From this page, if you hit referral information, you can also access the Aspen Strong Provider Directory and the Aspen Strong Community Calendar. The Aspen Strong Online Directory is where you can find a provider or organization near you. It is a safe, anonymous way to reach out for help and find a provider who meets your needs. From this page, you can search by provider type, city or zip code, language, or if you hit search, it will take you to an alphabetized list of providers and organizations. From here, you can continue to filter, again by location, if you're looking for an individual provider or organization. You can also filter based on financial support. You can find providers who take the Mental Health Fund, which is a fund in place to help cover costs for counseling sessions for those who can't afford it at full cost. You can also search by providers who take an EAP or an employee assistance program. These assistance programs offer free counseling sessions for those who receive this benefit, with Triad EAP and Minds and Associates being the most common EAP organizations in our valley. You can also filter, again, based on languages, treatment orientation, the age group in which an organization or provider works with, additional insurance and financial supports, provider type, whether they work with couples, families, individuals, or groups, or by specific issues, such as addiction. Find providers who work with people who might be struggling with addiction, or crisis services, different organizations and providers who will work with you if you are in crisis. It is important to know that our valley is rich with mental health resources and support, but it can often feel overwhelming and challenging to reach out and find them. That is where our online directory can be so helpful. Aspen Strong also has an online community calendar, which provides another anonymous way for community members to connect to people and resources and find trainings, support groups, and other classes that are taking place across the valley. Finally, at aspenstrong.org/connect, you will find more ways to connect to yourself and connect to others. There are toolkits for the general public, as well as toolkits for youth and toolkits for connecting to others in the workplace. We envision a valley where businesses and government agencies include mental hygiene within their organizational structure. It is important for employees to feel supported in the workplace, to reach out for support without feeling judgment or stigmatized, and to also recognize when a coworker might be struggling. At our Workplace Toolbox, you can expand your emotional toolbox. You can find articles for preventing drug abuse and excessive alcohol use in the workplace, for coping, 8 tips for working from home with mental illness, how to have a conversation with an individual about their mental health, tips for managing stress and anxiety, and 5 steps to better mental health in the workplace. You can learn about promoting mental health in the workplace, supporting staff with mental health concerns, finding that work-life balance. At our Connect page, you can also increase your empathy IQ. Understand how to talk to others about their feelings or just letting them know you're there. And if you or anyone you know seems to be struggling, don't hesitate to check out these online tools. Help is here. And it can just take one empathetic friend, coworker, or family member to connect someone to a resource. To learn more, you can also sign up for our newsletter and receive tools each month for maintaining your mental hygiene. And you can do that right here. If we accomplished anything today, we hope it was helping you to think about mental hygiene a little differently. Know what signs to look for and how to talk to someone about yours or their mental health, and to know how to better access resources for yourself or someone you know. Thank you, and learn more at aspenstrong.org or email us at info@aspenstrong.org.